Hello and welcome to Screens and Statutes. My name is Kimber Marie. I am by day an IP and brand protection associate attorney, and by night I'm a content creator creating content on all things creativity and culture and the law. Today's episode I'm very excited for. It's an interview with someone I met on LinkedIn a while back. I had come across his profile. He's at the intersection of sports and wellness and the law and has cultivated a really powerful and inspiring personal brand for himself. And so I wanted to bring him on and interview him. His name is Brendan. He gives great insights into what it's like basically creating a career for yourself. If you're a law student watching this or someone who is trying to break your way into an industry, I think Brendan sets a really, really good example of what that looks like. We get into some of the projects that he has. He's training for a marathon. He has his own newsletter called The Sideline that gives current event updates on all things sports and law. I highly recommend subscribing to it, and I will link to that below if you're interested. And so this is just a really good case study for people who maybe you're trying to make your way into an industry that's very competitive. That was the case for me as well, going into intellectual property. It's very competitive. It's a very interesting field. There's a lot of people wanting to break into it. It can be difficult. Sometimes you just have to make your own path in some way. The way that I thought about it in law school for myself was, even though IP is not my business yet, I'm going to make it my business. And Brendan is a really good example of this as well. He may not have been in sports law from the very beginning, but he makes it his business. And now it is a part of his brand. And he is someone that people go to learn more about it and to hear about the latest current events and updates that's going on in the sports law world. What I really hope you take away from this episode is cultivating a brand around something that you're passionate about and very interested in, and basically just an example to kind of follow to do that and what that looks like. And for those of you who are interested in sports law, Brendan and we go over some of the major hot topics that have been coming up lately. I highly recommend writing those down, researching them more. Drop your thoughts below in the comments. Make sure you subscribe and enjoy. Hi, Brendan. How are you today?
I'm doing well. How are you doing?
Good. I'm happy to be talking with you today. I came across your LinkedIn probably maybe like a year or two ago, and you've cultivated a reputation with sports and law. And that's why I wanted to interview you today. You have a very interesting brand. So I'd love it if you could just introduce yourself a little bit and how you ended up at the intersection of sports and law.
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks for having me on. I'm excited to be here and talk a little bit more about that. I think for me, the intersection of sports and law is just a really exciting intersection to be at. And there's many, many different ways that sports and law intersect and interact. There's people out there, there's kind of a long-standing informal debate, like, is sports law even a real thing? It's a little bit more abstract than other areas of the law. But in general, for me, being at the intersection of sports and law has kind of just been where my life and my career has guided me towards, with my passion as a lifelong athlete, playing throughout my childhood into high school, into college, and then continuing to push myself as an adult athlete after college and in and after law school as well. And then choosing to go to law school after my 4 years in college has kind of wanting to work with, sports brands and teams and athletes, and having some cool work experience, but overall just a passion to learn more, very, I would say, be on top of the headlines that are at the intersection of sports and law, which I could spend all day talking about it, but there's, a large variety of ways that sports and law interact. So to me, all of it is very interesting, and being able to be on top of some of the headlines in our world today is something that I'm passionate about.
Yeah. And I've noticed that you kind of have your own projects that you work on. Maybe you could give like a highlight of what your day to day is like and the many different, I know you're really big into like blogging on these areas and cases. So maybe you could speak to what your day to day looks like with those projects.
Yeah, for sure. So my main thing right now is I work as an attorney at a law firm. I don't practice sports law with the firm. So when I'm, at the office and working my main job, my main gig, it doesn't necessarily touch sports law. It's more just learning how to be an attorney. I work at a firm where we do litigation, mainly defense litigation work. So that's just learning how to be a lawyer, and that doesn't necessarily touch the sports law stuff. But outside of that, like I said, I keep tabs on the major sports law headlines and stories. And I have a weekly newsletter that I write that highlights one of those timely stories that might be developing or might have made headlines. And yeah, the other thing that I work on is I'm creating right now this community. Again, it's kind of sports law related because it's not only for people that work in sports law, but it's for former college athletes like myself that are now attorneys. So that's been a fun project and kind of side hustle that I've been pursuing. Those are some of the things that I've been working on, both with the main job and then also some of the things that I have time for on the side.
And getting into, current events in sports, what are some cases or maybe some laws, policies, or just current events going on in the sports world that you've been keeping track of and you're excited to follow?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think a major one this year was the House settlement with college athletics. And we're still seeing with the House settlement kind of all the effects of it and the fact that there's been a lot of appeals, whether it's because of Title IX violations, is what some people are alleging. Some of the back pay that was approved through the final approval of the settlement is still waiting to get paid out. And it's really just had this college athletics specifically over the past 3 to 5 years has just been the landscape has continued to evolve and it seems to be changing every day. So I would say the House settlement from this year was major sports law story to follow, and we're still seeing kind of the effects of it today. Obviously, with revenue sharing, these universities are now able to directly pay their student athletes, which is a major step to where college athletics is heading. So that would be, I would say, a main example. And then there's been a lot going on with sports betting allegations. This includes investigations into players. And there's a lot happening on the CBA side for the WNBA. There's so much going on. It's like you could really spend a whole day talking about it, a whole podcast talking about it. But I don't know who coined the phrase, but I always say like there's really never a dull day in sports law because there always seems to be something happening. Even like the media rights deal, which people might think, yeah, it's probably more sports business than sports law, but those contracts that are being signed and negotiated, that touches sports law. So it kind of depends how much you want to zoom out and how you want to classify sports law, but there always seems to be really exciting headlines happening every single day.
Yeah, something I've seen quite a few times pop up are NIL, name, image, likeness rights. Maybe you could give like a brief, just like bird's eye view of what that is and like kind of what I guess the stances are on that. Maybe like if you were talking to someone like me who's not, in the trenches when it comes to sports.
Yeah, sure. So I'm not an NIL expert. There are lawyers and non-lawyers who they know far more about NIL and can probably do a much better job at explaining it. But from a bird's eye view, from like looking at it from a big picture standpoint, 2021, I believe it was July 1st, 2021, about a year after the pandemic hit, but still very much kind of during lockdown in some areas of the country, student athletes seemingly overnight were able to start making money off of their NIL. So off of their name, image, and likeness. That publicity right, all of their classmates have always been able to do that, right? So if you're a football player at Michigan and your classmates are an engineer and a painter. Nothing is stopping the engineer and the painter from using their talents, their skills to make money outside of, class and being a student. But for many years, for decades, student athletes weren't allowed to get paid for their NIL. And the NCAA used, this concept of amateurism to basically say you cannot accept any money while you're a student athlete at the school, even so much as just a dollar or even just having certain benefits wasn't allowed. That changed in 2021. Since then, we've seen basically student athletes going from not being able to make any money off their NIL to over the next 3 or 4 years, some of the top student athletes in college making, millions of dollars. Some of it comes from the collective, which are wealthy alumni and boosters who are able to pay to retain the top talent. Other comes from, major brands that want to work in the space. So if a college athlete does a brand deal with like a Nike, or maybe they do a brand deal with, I don't know, sports energy drink, they're able to make money that way too. And then now we're kind of in, like I alluded to before, not like post NIL, because students, athletes still can do NIL deals, but now with revenue sharing, universities are now allowed to pay college athletes directly. So that's like a brief overview on how student athletes in the past 5 years or so been given the same rights that their fellow classmates have enjoyed for many decades. and now they're able to use their NIL to make money. That doesn't just mean brand deals, it also could be running a camp or doing one-on-one coaching or tutoring, anything like that.
Thank you for that. And going back to what you said earlier, because I know you mentioned being a college athlete, keeping up with athletics now in your own personal life. What is that like being a working attorney and then also having all these side projects? I think I saw on LinkedIn that you're training for a marathon. So, like, how do you balance all of this and incorporate athletics into your own personal life?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's a good question. I need that balance, right? So I'm someone who I've been playing sports, been active my whole life. If I was in a position where, my main job or just my work life balance was I didn't even have time to, go for a run or work out or exercise, I know that I wouldn't be able to be my best self without it. It's a piece of advice that I, give to my younger self. I also, when I went to law school, would give to a group of advisees that I was an advisor for. It's maintaining that balance is everything. And for me, not staring at a screen, going outside, being in nature, going for a run, going for a long run, lifting weights, like doing yoga. I need that. So yeah, in about a little less than a month, I'm going to be running Berlin, which I'm really excited for. I've done the New York and Chicago marathons with fundraising for Team for Kids, which is a really great nonprofit that I've been fortunate enough to be more and more involved with this year. And yeah, I'm excited. It should be good, and I've been working hard. So it's something that kind of I want to hold myself accountable, and I want it to be something that I'm involved with, and good way to give back to the community as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And good luck on that. One of my friends, she did her first ever marathon. I think it was last year. And the training while being a working attorney is no joke. So I know we're, closing up on time. So the question that I ask everyone that I interview at the very end is, we live in a world that's obsessed with disruption right now. Everyone wants to be the next, big tech person, celebrity. They want to disrupt things. What is one thing you think that we should preserve? And you can be as philosophical or as practical as you'd like with this question.
Yeah, it's a great question, and one that I definitely feel like can go a lot of different ways. But I guess the way that I interpret the question is, yes, people are trying to disrupt certain industries and, find different ways to get ahead. I also think, in addition to disruptions, that, the world is a little bit obsessed with distraction. And I see that a lot with, people my age, people younger, people older too, though, a lot of scrolling on social media these days, a lot of like consumption, and I think when I think about flipping that to what do we want to preserve, I definitely think the first things that jump out to me are critical thinking and being someone who creates and not just consumes, whether it's social media content, whether it's just looking at other people's relationships online. I just think there's so much happening in the world, and it's so easy to get to sit on your couch or sit indoors and just scroll on your phone. And I do it too. I'm not someone who is above that. As far as preserving, what to preserve, I guess this is a long-winded answer, but like curiosity and wanting to just learn more about how you can make a difference in the world, how you can make an impact, leaning into your passions. So going back to the first question, like sports are such a big part of my life. So I'm going to lean into that. Going to law school, learning about different areas of the law that I find fascinating, I'm going to lean into that. So don't be afraid to like lean into things that you naturally gravitate towards, because, if you see it as something you love doing and someone else may see it as a chore, you're going to have the advantage in the long run. To wrap it all up, so easy to just be on social media and scrolling your feed and looking at what your friends are up to. And I recently read the Let Them Theory book, and it's just talks a lot about adult friendship. And I just think there's nothing that really can replace genuine human connection. So making an effort to catch up with an old friend or make a new friend and make a new connection doesn't have to be your best friend, doesn't have to be who you invite to your wedding. It can just be someone that is either maybe they're building something you find very fascinating, or maybe they're in the same industry as you, or maybe they're not in the same industry as you, but you just are impressed with maybe their content creation, whatever it may be. Just try to put yourself out there, because I think the easier thing to do in today's world is to just consume and be so infatuated with what other people are doing. And again, I have social media, and I scroll a lot too, but at the end of the day, I've really been trying to push myself to kind of just get out there and put myself out there more.
Well, and thank you for all of that because I think you've set a really good example, especially on your LinkedIn presence and just the brand that you've cultivated for yourself in creating more than consuming and leaning into your passions. And so with that, I'd love it if you could tell people where can they connect with you online. You've mentioned, your blog, your newsletter. Where can people find all of this if they want to connect with you?
Yeah, for sure. So my LinkedIn is just my name, Brendan Duggan. And then outside of that, some of the sports law content is under, this brand that I've been running for a little bit now called Sideline Sports Law. The weekly newsletter is called The Sideline. You can find that through our Instagram. And I'm happy to connect and chat with anyone who's out there that if I said anything that spoke to you or that you want to talk more about. So definitely reach out to me. And yeah, thank you so much for giving me the time and the platform to talk.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you guys so much for watching this interview with Brendan. I really enjoyed it. Again, he is just a well of information on the intersection of sports and the law and wellness. And he sets such a good example on his own of what it looks like to create your own path. If you like this, please subscribe, follow me at Kimber Marie James, and put in the comments below any subjects you'd like me to go over in the future. Maybe there's someone you would like me to interview. I hope you guys have a great day, and I'll see you next time.